Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That is what STEM means. And in this video, I am going to suggest to you that Black British people are largely underrepresented in STEM fields. And this is an important topic because if you're paying any attention to the way that the world is going and has been going over the last 15, 20 years, STEM is the future. STEM is where it's at. The growth industries are in STEM. STEM is what's the STEM fields are what are driving all of the trends in society. You can of course talk about AI, but there are many other areas in which STEM is critical. And so my overall point with talking about STEM in my last video, this video, and in the future videos is that if Black people are generally speaking underrepresented in STEM fields, that is locking Black people here in Britain at least into a situation where we're going to just be spectators as other people kind of determine and dictate where society goes. So stay tuned. I'm going to dig into, as I usually do, various reports and papers here. You can find links to all of these papers by going to my Substack and signing up. So it's eliwananda.substack.com. Sign up there is completely free, although you have the option of signing up for the paid version if you'd like to help to support these videos. And this is a very long-term project of mine with these videos. I'm not looking 6 months, a year, whatever. I'm thinking literally decades. So I'm grateful to all of the supporters who are supporting me on Substack and Patreon and so on. At some point, maybe I'll set up memberships on YouTube as well. And make sure, of course, that you subscribe to the channel. But anyway, long talking over, let's talk about Black British people in STEM fields. First things first, the most useful bit of data that I could find comes from a paper by the All-Party Parliamentary Group, or APPG, called The State of the Sector, Diversity and Representation in STEM Industries in the UK by the All-Party Parliamentary Group. So this is looking at the proportion of each of these subsectors of the STEM fields that are made up of employees of the different ethnicities there. We've got white, Asian, a joint category of Pakistani and Bangladeshi. Oh, sorry, it's white, Indian, a joint subcategory of Pakistani/Bangladeshi, black, and other. So the immediate glaring omission there is Chinese. The Chinese are obviously in the other category. So that's not very useful because imagine all the other people who are in the other category. But anyway, it is what it is. So you can see there in the overall workforce, 88% of employees are white, 2% are Indian, 2% are Pakistani or Bangladeshi, 3% are black, and 4% are other. But in the engineering sector, 93% of the employees are white, which is slightly more than the overall workforce. 2% are Indian, 1% is Pakistani/Bangladeshi, which is half of the overall workforce, which is 2%. 2% are black, which is about 30% lower than the overall workforce, which is 3%. And then 3% are other in comparison to 4%. So black people there, as you can see there, are underrepresented in engineering. Not as much as Pakistani/Bangladeshi people are, but still. Then you look at health. In the health sector, the white employees are 81%, which is underrepresentation compared to the overall workforce. Indians make up 6%, which is a massive overrepresentation because they only make up 2% of the overall workforce. Similarly, Pakistani/Bangladeshis, they make up 4% of that workforce in comparison to 2% of overall. The black percentage is exactly in line with the overall workforce at 3%. And then you've got 5% other, which is higher than the 4% other. Then you've got science and maths. White people are exactly the same proportion as they are in the overall workforce, 88%. Indians, slightly overrepresented at 3%. Pakistani/Bangladeshi are underrepresented. They make up 2% of the overall workforce, but only 1% of the science and maths. Similarly, black people make up 2% of that workforce in comparison to 3% of the overall workforce. And then finally, you've got technology, where white people are slightly underrepresented. Indians are hugely overrepresented. So they make up 7% of the technology workforce in comparison to 2% of the overall workforce. Pakistani Bangladeshis, 2%, in line with the overall workforce as well. And again, black people make up 2% of the technology workforce, whereas they make up 3% of the overall workforce. So black people are the most underrepresented in engineering, science and maths, and technology. Indians are overrepresented in technology, health, and science and maths. Pakistani/Bangladeshis are underrepresented in science and maths and engineering, and they're overrepresented in health. Now, that's so much for that. So black people overall, from the best data that I could find, are underrepresented in STEM fields. So we need to start to ask ourselves, well, why is it? Why are we, as black British people, underrepresented in STEM fields? Well, one of the most important places to look at is education or academia. And that's where I'm going to be spending the rest of this video. The good thing about academia is that data is much more consistently and solidly gathered, and we can get a very clear picture of what's going on in the education. So first of all, let's look at higher education. I'm going to look at a paper that's published in the Nature, one of the foremost science journals in the Western world. And we can see from this table here that black students make up, so this is from 2020 to 2021, black students made up around 8% of the overall undergraduate population in STEM subjects, but a much lower percentage of STEM research staff and professors. Now, interestingly, white students are actually also underrepresented, but they're underrepresented not only amongst postgrads and academic research staff, but also amongst undergraduates. It's only amongst professors that white people are slightly overrepresented. So that's actually, this video is about black British people being underrepresented in STEM, but as far as the country as a whole goes, there's an issue with regard to white people, going into STEM fields. And I think that is the big driver behind Britain, depending on who you ask, kind of starting to lag behind and fall behind other advanced countries, if you want to call them, in STEM fields. Not enough white people, who make up the overwhelming majority of people in Britain, not enough of them are entering into STEM fields at a higher level of higher education. Returning to black people now, black students. And remember, all of this data here, the data for undergraduates comes from black British students only. And you'll see that there's a bit of a cliff edge from postgraduate to academic research staff. So black students are actually quite massively overrepresented amongst undergraduates in STEM fields. When you look at their overall census, our overall prevalence in the overall population, we make up a much higher proportion of the undergraduate STEM population, So we maybe make up about 3%, maybe 4% of the overall population in Britain. We make up 8% of STEM undergraduates. We are slightly overrepresented amongst also postgrads. So STEM postgrads are, we make up a higher chunk of those than we would if you just looked at our overall population in that age range. But then you'll see there, black students are underrepresented amongst academic research staff and very underrepresented amongst professors. All of this, again, is in STEM fields. I'll read this quote from the paper. It says, "Although it takes time for increased diversity at junior levels to filter through to senior ones, data suggest that the current pace of change is slow, particularly among black researchers. People from black ethnicities accounted for 1.7% of junior academic staff in 2008-2009, growing to 2.5% in 2020-2021. But over those 12 years, the proportion of black scientists in professor and senior management roles barely shifted, rising from 0.5% to 0.6%. There are, of course, going to be various different reasons behind this. The question is, why are black people failing to move on from undergraduate and postgraduate level into postdoctoral and academic research and up to professorships in STEM fields? This is a useful report here, which I'll link, which is from the Royal Society for Chemistry of Chemistry. This paper is called "Missing Elements: Racial and Ethnic Inequalities in the Chemical Sciences" from 2022, and it lists a few reasons here, as you can see. I'll just pick out a couple of key points here. You can see there that specifically looking at the chemistry field, black people made up about 5% of undergraduates, which is again higher than our overall percentage in our overall population, but we make up just 1.4% of postgraduate chemistry students, 1% of non-professorial academic chemistry staff, and 0% of chemistry professors. You know, and it says here, 0%. Now look at this. You might think this is something that applies to all non-white ethnic groups, but as you see here, across all subjects, only 0.8% of UK professors wrong. In chemistry departments, 0% of professors identify as black or mixed compared to a combined 5% of the UK population, and 5.7% identify as Asian compared to 6.9% of the UK population. So Asians are slightly underrepresented, but nowhere near to the same extent as black people are underrepresented. I would say that again, that Asian category, there's a lot of nuance you're gonna find that if you were to remove Chinese from that category, you would see, if you had Chinese as a separate category, also if you removed Indians and had them as a separate category, you would see a much higher percentage of them are in these fields, professors and higher academic research staff, than would be the case for Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. Then there's a few things here which I'll leave you to. It talks about, for example, funding is a barrier for minority ethnic researchers and a few other things, but those are not the main focus of what I'm going to be talking about. One thing I want to say to you, we said there that 0% of chemistry professors are black or mixed. Now that's actually a convention in these data. There's a convention that if the numbers are really, really low, and I think if it's 0.5% or something like that, the convention is to round that down to 0. In actual fact, there is a black professor in chemistry in Britain, and it's this guy. This brother's name is Robert Mokaya, and he's the UK's only black chemistry professor. Now, one thing you'll learn about this guy, you can probably see from the name. So he's one of my boys. He's from East Africa. He's from Kenya, and he was actually born in Kenya, like I was actually. He was raised in Kenya. I wasn't. I came here when I was very young. He was educated in Kenya. He went to school in Kenya. He went to college in Kenya. He did his university undergraduate studies in Kenya. He only came here in his adulthood. And what you're going to find is that a large proportion of those black people who are in academic research staff and professorial roles fall into the same kind of category as Professor Mokaya. They are black people who have not been born and raised here. They've come here later on in life, like my parents did. So this table here comes from some written evidence that was provided to a parliamentary discussion about this whole topic of diversity in STEM. And this is referring to the 2018-2019 academic year. Look at these data. So as of that time, there were 13,500 postdoctoral researchers, and of those, only 260 were black. And that was 2% of those. This is in STEM overall. Of those 13,500, 5,000 of those were UK domiciles, which means that they are UK-based people. But generally speaking, they're British people, or they're certainly raised here. They live here. So what's that? 5, 10, about 4. Was it 4 out of every 10 of them, roughly, these postdoctoral researchers were UK domiciles. But when you look at the number out of the 260 black postdoc researchers in STEM fields in that year, 65% of them were UK domiciles. That's 1 in 4. And then you can look at professors as well. The numbers get even tinier. There were 9,500 professors in STEM fields in that year. 6,660 of them were UK domiciled. So a large, a majority of them were UK domiciled. But when you look at that, only 45 professors, STEM professors, black STEM professors in UK universities in that academic year, which made up 0.5% of the overall total. And of those, only 25 were UK domiciles. So you can take from that black British people make up that's in 2019, there were less than 100 postdoctoral researchers or professors in STEM fields who were black British in the UK in 2018, 2019. So this is why I focused the title of my video on black British people, because when you just focus on the black term, just like when you just focus on the Asian term, particularly when it comes to things like this, STEM and technology and stuff like that, you are missing the nuance that actually in this case, a majority of those black people who are in those research roles, higher research roles, postdoctoral research roles, were not UK, not black British people. And there's an issue here. What's going on? Well, what I want to next talk about is how they're black students, undergraduate students, do appear to be struggling when it comes to getting those highest grades. So this is again from 2018, 2019. This is from another report by the Royal Society. And it shows us the proportion by class of first degree for UK domiciled STEM first degree qualifiers by ethnicity in 2018, 2019. In other words, for those students in these ethnic groups who were in STEM fields, what percentage of them got first class, what percentage of them got 2-1, what percentage got 2-2, what percentage got a third. I've talked about this kind of data for all of the subjects in university, and it's a similar picture here. For black people, unfortunately, black students, undergraduate students, a lower proportion of them than all the other ethnic groups get first class honours degrees in STEM fields. So whereas 26% of Asians, 30% of mixed, 26% of other, 35% of white got firsts, that goes right down to 18% of black undergrads got first in STEM subjects. And then at the other end, whereas all the other ethnic groups, you're looking at about 5% or less of them got thirds or just passed, that rises right away up to 9.5% or 10% of black undergraduates in STEM fields got thirds. So we are too many of the black undergraduates are on the lower end of the scale getting thirds, and too few of them are on the upper end of the scale getting firsts. Now, one thing I would say, there's a little bit of good news in here from this same paper, which is that things used to be a lot worse. As you can see here, these charts, or these lines here, these charts here show the trend from 2008 all the way over to 2019. So in these 10 years, you'll see across all ethnic groups, the number of students, undergrads, getting firsts or 2-1s rose up. But the biggest rise was amongst black undergraduates from about 35%. Oh, and that's male and female as well. So it separates it out into male and female. The females are purple, male are the green. 36% of females and 38% of males were getting first or 2-1s in STEM fields, black students. That rose up in 2018 to 55% of males and 64% of females. So that's a pretty incredible rise, a pretty incredible increase in attainment, particularly for the women, actually. So to summarize so far, we've seen that it appears that black people make up a lower proportion of STEM fields in employment than you would expect. This most likely represents the fact that black people are underrepresented in the higher echelons of STEM education. They make up a small minority of those in academic research positions, postdoc positions, and in particular professorial positions. This last point largely probably reflects the fact that black people are less likely to get the good grades in STEM fields when they do their undergraduate courses. So that's just a quick overview so far of the picture. What I'm going to do in the next video, I'd really like to dig further now. We've gone all the way back to undergraduates, and we've seen that black undergraduates in STEM fields are struggling. What I would like to do in a future video, possibly the next video, is to look at that and see, well, okay, what's happening further upstream? You know, why are these black students not doing so well in STEM fields when they're in uni, undergraduate level? And that's where we're going to start to talk a little bit more, you know, about things that I've talked about more in my videos before, which is that we as black people, generally speaking, have got a challenge, have got a problem when it comes to preparing our children for success, frankly, for them to be able to thrive and blossom and prosper in all areas of their life. Entering into STEM fields, for me, I see that as kind of like a useful marker. If we see an increase in the success in children in STEM fields and then in universities and going into jobs and whatnot, I think that's a marker of progress. And so we're going to be talking about some of those fundamental things that I think we as black people are not doing and need to start doing at a younger age to start to prepare our children to enter into these fields, which, as I said at the top of the video, these are the fields which are shaping the future. They've been shaping the future for the last 15, 20 years, even more really, and they're going to increasingly be shaping the future as we enter more and more into this kind of AI age that we find ourselves in. All right. So take care of yourselves. Look forward to your thoughts and your ideas and experiences in particular and your questions. Take care for now. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you sign up at eliwananda.substack.com, and I'll see you soon. Peace.